you click on references and table operations, the big push for us this last few weeks was the group and aggregate. And so you can see there's a whole bunch of reference documents for the groups and ags. It just keeps on coming. We just started on the query language operations, so we don't have much there. But for the table operations, it's pretty full. If you want to go and explore and look through some of the documentation, it's been pretty well reviewed by Chip and our own eyes. But if you happen to notice anything, then let us know and we can change it on up.
Okay.
All right, very good. Corey?
Yeah, so I've been working on the OpenAPI client for C++, and I have a demo working finally. And what this is going to do, just by the way, I should share my screen. Because we don't have data flowing back and forth between the server and the client yet, the nature of this demo is going to be create tables on the server, kind of swizzle them on the client using where and select and so on, and then we're going to view the results back on the server via the web interface. So I'll show you what I mean by sharing my screen, if I can figure out how to do that. Oh. Can you tell this is the first time I've ever done this?
I think you're doing great, Corey.
Oh, thank you. All right, so is that working yet? All right, so here.
Now we see your presentations.
This is the whole. I don't know if this is readable, but this is the Deephaven. That was the Deephaven console. What I do is I'm going to go to Groovy, and I'm going to load my I've made a little CSV file that has my demo data in it. It's just like 5 lines of kind of synthetic data where I've made this trade data, if you will. Now, if I go over here, what I'm showing is like these are a few commands, a few like test programs in C++, and this is really a kind of representation of our like fluent interface, meaning people, they kind of make queries kind of symbolically using constructs in the C++ language. So here at the top, this thing I've highlighted, they're getting the column names from this table, import date, ticker, and volume, putting them into variables. Then they're using this thing that looks very much like a C++ expression. I don't know if you can read that. I can zoom in if you can't, but it's like table, where, and then there's a C++ expression here. Import date equals a certain date, ticker equals IBM, and then a select. And the nice thing about this is that it's compact. It's in the language, so if I had like extra parentheses or whatever, that would be syntax errors and it wouldn't compile. And what I can show is when I run this, that it actually works. So I'm going to run my little program, and then I'm going to stop here at the end of test 1.
Is that all based on C++ operator overloading, Corey?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah, heavily. So heavily using both. I mean, this .where, .select, that's just the usual method calls. But this expression inside here, you can see that import date equals that date and ticker equals IBM. Those double and, the ampersand and the equal signs, it is really understanding those entities and making a little expression tree, and it's passing the expression tree to where. So that's not being evaluated as an expression locally. It's being evaluated as an expression tree and then being passed to the server. And so with test 1 done, I can go back to my server. That's been written in the server as variable result 0. And because of another little wart, I have to assign it to another variable over here. But hopefully, that's the result of my where. If you go back to my original table, there was only one row with IBM in it. You can see here, and the where clause has successfully selected it. And the next demo is pretty similar, although it shows two ways. We can still use the kind of the old. You can tell here I've not used operator overloading. I've passed the expression kind of as a string, and this thing demonstrates that still works. I'm taking the table where so and so, selecting 3 columns and doing a head 2, and then I'm kind of doing it both ways. I'm doing it as a string, and I'm also doing it symbolically. And if we were to look at those tables, I'm not going to look at all of them, but I'll look at result 2. You can see that it kind of works, and I got 2 rows where the ticker was Apple. And the other thing that I think is nice about this Fluent interface that's not necessarily obvious is that when I did an expression like table.where.select.head, I'm getting a lot of kind of asynchrony for free. Like those things are kind of, all 3 of those are firing off to the server at once. It's not like I have to wait for the where to be done before I fire the select, and I don't have to wait for the select to be done before I fire off the head. The library is kind of keeping track of those kind of in-flight requests, and then only kind of stopping when it needs to actually kind of print an answer. So the programmer, I think, is getting the benefit of some asynchrony for free without having to think about callbacks. And I do have I do have async versions of every call. If the programmer really wants to write code callback style, they can, head async, select async, and where async. It's not that fun, but if they have a need for that, they can do that, and that's all wired up too.
Are you taking advantage of the server-side mechanism we have now in terms of dependent exports?
I think I am, although I don't know how that works. I'm gonna sort of defer on that issue because I'm not sure I'm using it correctly. But I'm not. I was mostly referring in this feature I was talking about to the fact that I'm using gRPC async calls. I'm not doing anything special with respect to tickets. If there's some even further coolness with regard to like that topic, I don't know what you're going to have to educate me on that.
Sure, we can talk about it offline. It's fine.
Okay. And then finally, the third step is just that, like, this is errors come back as exceptions, even though there's all this asynchrony. If I do something nonsensical like this, it's interesting because the table.where, that's an async call, even though the client doesn't know it, and so they only really observe an exception when they kind of need to evaluate, like get an answer back, and so in this case, they won't really see an exception until they use that table one. I don't know if you can see this on your screen. This is some nonsensical where clause with like 5 closing parentheses. But once they finally do kind of observe a result, an exception gets propagated back to them as expected. You can see that down here. They get a GUID as an exception, and they have to go, I guess, consult the logs to see what the exception actually was.
Yeah, we should try to get better at that, but that's the state of things right now. It's sort of an ongoing debate between Nate, Colin, and I, maybe. Interesting. Is there a way to make the where synchronous?
I mean, there certainly is a way to do it. I guess the question would be, what does the what do we want? I can always make it synchronous, or I can make it. I was thinking I could make it kind of a configuration option where, for debugging, you could make all your calls strictly synchronous, and that would make them be more precise in terms of where the errors were thrown. But for performance, you could make them more asynchronous. We can do whatever makes sense, but we'd have to. I mean, my code doesn't demand that we go one way or the other. I just thought it would be kind of more performant if we had as many commands in flight as possible. And that's how the C#
You should take a look at
too.
some of the batch stuff that I've done. And I think you were gone last week when I did a little bit of code demonstration about the interfaces I'm using to expose that to the end user in Java, at least.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that would be great. I would like to. I'll follow up with you on that too afterwards. And that's it for me.
Very good progress, Corey. I see you working with this.
Yeah, this is great. This feels, as of where we were thinking a couple weeks ago, this feels ahead of schedule, actually.
Yeah, so Corey, is this about consistent with what JJ has worked with?
Yeah, I mean, I took some pains to the extent possible to not change the front end syntax. So this syntax would look pretty similar to the enterprise version of the same thing. It's starting to diverge because the concepts are different enough. We don't really have servers and workers. The data coming back is going to be streaming with Arrow. I mean, we don't log in. I mean, as I'm migrating the code, I really wanted to have one code base that went to the two backends, but it's just not. That hasn't been true, and I'm starting to do a lot of pretty severe surgery to make it work on this side, and I'm a little bit worried about that. I mean, if that made sense, like I'm trying to keep the front end consistent. Some of the concepts are different, so I can't, and even the library is starting to diverge between the two versions.
Well, to some extent, we expect that, and I think that you shouldn't be too concerned about it. Just let's keep advancing on the community side.
From a user experience standpoint, there was nothing he said that felt new to me from what I've tested with, so it all feels very similar.
Yeah. I think where you'd feel the differences is when we finally figured out what we're doing about kind of reading back column data, and the callback story is going to be different probably if you're like waiting for snapshot callbacks or delta updates or whatever. I think that's going to be quite different, I assume.
All right, excellent. Devin, should we move on to you?
Sure.
Thanks again, Corey.
Good first demo.
You want to stop sharing, Corey?
Never.
All right. Let me share a screen here. Is everybody able to see this, and is this an okay size?
Yep.
So at the top here, we've got some Docker logs just to see what the services are doing. What I'm going to show off is some QSTs that I can fire off to the server. So this is a remote Java client, very lightweight. I've pre-constructed some QSTs. When I say QST, that's a query syntax tree. It's basically a serialized definition of a series of table operations that you want to perform. And then on the backside, I'm only going to be consuming the size changes of the tables I'm creating. So I will show here, I've got some QSTs that I've saved out. I've generated these using various operations and code mains just to get some stuff. I'll go through some of them right now. So I is a table that ticks every second, and we'll be able to put it through this main that I have here that again just fires off these QSTs and then subscribes to the size updates. So I here is this is kind of the serialized or the representation of the protobuf. So we've got a timetable that ticks every second. And then I'm saying I equals I here and then exporting that. So there's two operations that are going on right here. And if I execute it again, you'll see every second the size of our table is increasing by 1. The J table is going to be very similar to this. It's slightly slower, so it's ticking every 3.3 seconds. And we can see the size updates happen about that time too. And again, this is two operations right here. Now we can also multiply these two or cross-join these two tables together and then multiply the results, and we'll get another table here and we can see what this definition looks like. So this is the same thing cross join together, and then we're doing a new column ij equals I times j. You can see it's growing by the cross product of those two things multiplied together. And we've got 6 operations here. You'll notice that in this case, I'm only exporting the size of ij, but I could also export I, j, and ij, and we're still going to have 6 operations here because they are all shared. So in this case, we're exporting all 3 tables and getting the size updates for all of them at the same time. If we wanted to look at, we've got some other ones that are here, ij. We've got average, sum, min, max, and median that we can run. So those are 11 operations total based on that. So we got a median here. We got a max here. You can see we've got all these different sizes ticking away. I guess since it's an aggregation, the size isn't that interesting because it's just going to be 1 in this case. Some other QSTs that I have just to, we can send the server a lot of different ones at the same time. These are simple timetables that have the given period. So if I send all the time star ones to the server, we've got 42 different timetables with 42 different time periods all ticking, and we can see their sizes all being pushed back to me. Of course, I forgot to mention this, when you cancel it out, you'll see all the exports on the server side get released, and we don't have any more ticking. And then there's some more interesting ones, but of course we could always just send all of our QSTs to the server at the same time. And now we've got, I don't know how many, 233 operations that we sent to the server. And as mentioned a little bit earlier, this is all done in a single request, one request to the server as a single batch request.
Questions, comments?
I was going to say that's pretty cool, Devin. I really like it. 42 tables of work.
Can you just indulge us for a minute or so and tell us the next steps, or what would be the next thing that would be coming through from your work, Devin?
Yeah, I think the next steps behind this are getting actual barrage data, consuming barrage messages, and then being able to use those tables, use actual tables on your client. Right now, like, this is a very simple subscriber where I'm subscribing to, table size changes, which is a really easy thing to consume. But eventually we're going to have to start consuming indexes, barrage messages, shift indexes, and stuff like that. And I mean, we've got all that code in DB, and so it's going to be wrapping it up into an interface. Part of the JavaClient hope of mine is that we can write some representative code based on a QST or a table plan or a table definition. Not quite sure what the best way to describe it is right now, but have that be exactly the same definition of code that runs remotely or locally. So that's one of the hopes. And to be able to do that, we need to have interfaces that properly abstract these concepts that we've kind of been able to get away with before because we're always running on the server for the most part. So it's yeah, that's
cool. All right, who was next? Did Christian have something to demo, or?
I don't think we had anybody else today.
No, okay. I can show you my notebook progress if you'd like.
Let's do it.
All right, so share my screen. So I've got this file list here. Now you can create a new directory. So that's created there. I still haven't updated this file list to actually show directories as something different and that you can expand and that kind of thing. you have a file here, and you can, the save as dialog is here, so you can save it as a different file, and it'll update and rename that file. I've still got a lot of cleanup to do with validation and that kind of thing to make sure you're not overwriting an existing file and that kind of thing. I'm trying to reuse a lot of the code we've already got. I'm just converting it to TypeScript and removing the dependency on PQ storage that we currently have. And so yeah, that's coming along.
So is there a Git widget that somebody else has written that we can cram in there, or is that something we'd actually have to develop?
So I was looking at the Jupyter Grid Git widget Jupyter Git widget, for example, and we could probably reuse parts of that. The thing is, we'll need to have something that runs, like we'll have to have a Git module running on the server as well. So that will be put on top of all this at the end. Yes. Any other questions? Okay, that's it for me. Short and sweet.
All right, I think that's the end of the demo, right? Anything else to discuss, or anybody else want to come in at the end? Something new and heroic?
No.
All right, everybody. Thanks for all the work in progress. We have a few more days of June, and then we'll release, and then we're on to the month of crunch. So it'll get pretty real.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Have a good weekend.